More than any other character, creature, or plot element, crystals have been integral to the history of Final Fantasy since the first game. While they do not feature in every game, they are ubiquitous throughout the franchise as each game explores their mythos in its own way. Hironobu Sakaguchi specifically attributes the idea for including crystals in the first Final Fantasy to designer Koichi Ishii. A major idea in the game was that the world existed because of the four forces of nature, and all creatures and objects in the world reflected those forces. According to an interview with scenario writer Kenji Terada, crystals were used to represent the power of the elements because crystals are a widely known and used trope in fantasy settings. During development of Final Fantasy II, it was his idea to retain the crystals even though the game was going to be set in a separate world from the first, as he felt that if Final Fantasy became a larger franchise, the idea of crystals could be a recurring theme that future games explored in different ways. The crystals represent the elemental forces of earth, fire, water, and wind. Many ancient cultures considered these to be the primal forces that made up existence, and over centuries philosophers and thinkers came up with various explanations for how the elements are connected and are expressed in the world, assigning them to animals, compass directions, the seasons, and so forth. In Japan, the concept was known through the Buddhist belief of Mahabhuta, which teaches that the world exists because of the four fundamental great elements. In Final Fantasy, the crystals are large shards of magical crystal. They most often have a hexagonal shape with cut facets, but other times they are spherical, or rough and irregular. Most often they are a shade of blue, but are sometimes color-coded to correspond to their elements: red for fire, blue for water, yellow for earth, and green for wind. In later games there may only be one crystal, not four. In these cases the crystal does not represent a specific elemental force, but more broadly is the source of life and light in the world. Either way, the health and stability of the world is usually tied to the crystals, and if they are harmed or lose their power, the world could be destroyed as a result. Some games also feature dark crystals, which have had drastically different roles in each title. Many Final Fantasy games discuss the idea of balance between light and darkness, and while the four elemental crystals are attuned to light, the dark crystals, naturally, are attuned to darkness. Despite this, dark crystals and the concept of darkness are not always inherently evil, though this is sometimes the case. The idea of dark crystals may be inspired by the concept of a fifth element in the classical lineup. Different belief systems propose aether, space, or the void as a fifth element standing apart from the other four, and it is the element that makes up things that do not exist in the material world. Unlike the light crystals, dark crystals are not tied to the four elements, just the element of darkness. Dark crystals are typically colored black, purple, or orange. The crystals are often sapient and able to communicate with humans. Most commonly they bestow power upon those that are worthy, naming them warriors of light and tasking them to protect the world from malevolent forces. Many villains in each game seek the crystals, variably to destroy them, to seize their power, or to destabilize the forces of nature. Another recurring theme is humanity attempting to tap into the power of the crystals and in doing so threaten the world's stability, either directly from those abusing their power, or from mankind interfering with the natural order of things. Crystals are often connected to the divine, and either are created by the gods or represent their presence in the physical world. Other times, the crystals themselves are worshipped as deities, or a deity takes the form of a crystal. Though crystals as described thus far do not appear in every Final Fantasy game, it is common for the lore of the setting to include them somehow. Many games have magic or some sort of magical substance that can be crystallized into a physical form, and sometimes the life force or souls of the living can also be crystallized this way. Summoned monsters often manifest from crystals or are symbolized by crystals. More broadly, many games have items, equipment, and other objects made of crystal that are important to the story or the setting, and several games have crystals as normal items that are used for crafting and trading. For purposes of this video scope, only crystals that are important and represent the ideas mentioned previously will be covered. In the original Final Fantasy's NES localization, the crystals were referred to as orbs due to the constraints of character limits in the text, but in the Japanese game they were always called the crystals. The name is still fitting, as the crystals are spheres in the NES version, and it was in later re-releases that they took on their more familiar appearance. Unlike in later games, the crystals are not held in shrines or altars. They are carried by the main party, the Warriors of Light. Altars where the power of the four elements is concentrated exist in the world, and crystals lay in these altars, but the game is clear that these are merely altars, and it is the crystals the party carries that are integral to the safety of the world. The four fiends have disrupted the flow of power from the elements, and the Warriors of Light go on a quest to destroy them and take the crystals to the altars to restore their power. The altar of Earth is in the Earth Cavern, the altar of Fire is in the volcano Mount Golg, the altar of Water is underwater in the Sunken Temple, and the altar of Wind is in the floating castle of the Lufenians. When the four crystals are restored, the warriors return to the Chaos Shrine, which stands at the intersection of the four altars, and a dark crystal there transports them to the past to face Garland, the mastermind behind the four fiends. In the spin-off Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, the crystals carried by Jack and his friends are quite different from the ones carried by the Warriors of Light, and characters note that they do not shine with light, but are shrouded in darkness. In the documents the player finds during the game, it is explained the crystals that rest at the altars were created by the Lufenians to stabilize the world of Cornelia, which was on the verge of collapse due to an imbalance in the forces of light and darkness. To aid in their control of the world, the Lufenians send ancients called Strangers into Cornelia to combat the darkness, and their memories are extracted and placed in the dark crystals to keep them obedient and focused. It is not precisely clear how the story of Strangers of Paradise meshes with the original Final Fantasy, particularly as the game treats the four crystals at the altars of the four forces as the crystals, and does not explain where the four crystals carried by the Warriors of Light come from or how they factor into things. But the game has DLC add-ons coming that will continue the story, so these ambiguities may be cleared up in the future. The crystals play a minor role in Final Fantasy II. Virion and his allies travel to the Mysidian Tower to obtain the strongest magic, Ultima, and the tower is sealed with a crystal rod. Atop the tower rest 5 spherical crystals. One holds the Ultima spell, and the other 4 boost a stat of a random party member. In the original release of the game, their connection to the crystals is tangential, but is made explicit in the Game Boy Advance release and future ports, where the crystals now state they grant power associated with the elements. Fire bestows strength, Earth bestows spirit, Water bestows intelligence, and Wind bestows speed. Final Fantasy III makes the crystals central to the plot again, and they are held in altars around the world. The Wind Crystal is in a cave near the Earth Crystal is in the Ancient's Maze, the Fire Crystal is in the Molten Cave, and the Water Crystal is in the Cave of Tides. The Magus Zond wished to become immortal, so he sought to drain the light of the crystals to freeze time. With the power of the Earth Crystal, Zond caused a great earthquake that raised the floating continent containing the Wind Crystal and Fire Crystal into the sky, and then drained the light of the Water Crystal to flood the world and turn the people to stone. With this, the balance of the world was disrupted, and the world remained in stasis. However, Zond still wished to drain the light of the remaining crystals to complete his plan. 4 children stumble upon the Wind Crystal and are appointed the Warriors of Light to protect the other crystals. They eventually learn that Zond was manipulated into draining the crystals by the Cloud of Darkness, and he believed that allowing a flood of darkness to consume the world would save him. The Warriors of Light enter the world of darkness and find 4 dark crystals, with 4 sealed Warriors of Darkness, and learn that 1,000 years ago, overuse of the crystals created an overabundance of light, and the power of darkness was required to counteract it. Contrary to its name, the Cloud of Darkness is not associated specifically with darkness, and will manifest when either force is imbalanced. With the aid of the Warriors of Darkness, the Cloud of Darkness is defeated, and the world is saved. In the 3D versions of the game, the crystals are each given a color-coded model, with a pale blue being used for the Wind Crystal instead of green. Accordingly, the dark crystals are darker shades of the same colors. Aside from the 4 elemental crystals, a crystal exists in Goldor's manor, and is initially believed to be the Earth Crystal, but it is just a fake golden crystal that Goldor is protective of due to his obsession with gold. The crystals are once again a major plot point in Final Fantasy IV, but they are not tied to the health of the world. They are merely objects of worship kept by 4 nations. Mysidia holds the Water Crystal, Damcyan holds the Fire Crystal, Valbul holds the Wind Crystal, and Troya holds the Earth Crystal. The warlock Golbez seeks the crystals, and takes control of Baron's airship fleet to go to war with these kingdoms for them. After he has all 4, Kain, who had been brainwashed to serve Golbez, reveals there are 4 more crystals, the Dark Crystals. They literally represent the hidden, shadow side of the world, the underground. At a volcanic crater in Agot, the party finds a passage to an underground kingdom of magma populated by dwarves. 2 of the Dark Crystals have already been taken, and Golbez takes the 3rd from the Dwarven castle. He reveals the reason he is taking the crystals is to use them to activate the Tower of Babel, which can lead to the moon where ultimate power resides. The final crystal is in the sealed cave, and Cecil and his allies decide to claim it before Golbez can break the seal, but Golbez takes control of Cain again and steals the crystal. Using the lunar whale, the party travels to the moon and meets Fusoya, a Lunarian. Fusoya explains that the Lunarians are refugees from a destroyed planet. At the time, humans were still evolving, so they created the Red Moon and entered stasis on it. The crystals were brought to Earth by the Lunarians to aid in humanity's development, and 8 were left on Earth while 8 more were kept on the Red Moon to keep it in orbit. The crystals of the moon also seal Zemus, the true villain who is controlling Golbez. A crystal of flight rests on the lunar whale, and is what enables travel between Earth and the Red Moon. In the final battle, Golbez uses a crystal to attempt to render Zeromus vulnerable, but only one bearing the power of light can use it, so he gives the crystal to Cecil, and the crystal's power reveals Zeromus' true form and allows him to be destroyed. It is unclear if the crystal Golbez uses is one of the 8 crystals of the Earth, or something else. In the sequel, The After Years, it is revealed that the crystals were created by an alien being called the Creator, who sent crystals to many worlds to encourage evolution, seeking answers to why his race's evolution failed and they were destroyed. The Creator brings his vessel, the True Moon, into orbit around Earth, and sends his servants the Maenads to reclaim the crystals. The crystals of the Red Moon lose their power and are shattered, while the crystals of the Earth are taken to the True Moon. In the depths of the True Moon, the party finds crystals that spawn monsters from other Final Fantasy games, ostensibly taken from other worlds the Creator seeded life on. The party eventually destroys the Creator and recovers their own crystals. Final Fantasy V again ties the crystals to the health of the world, and deals with humans abusing their powers. The game begins with King Tycoon investigating the Wind Crystal in the Wind Shrine, and it becomes apparent that dark forces are trying to destroy the crystals. The Water Crystal is kept in the Waltz Tower, the Fire Crystal is kept in Karnak, and the Earth Crystal is in the Ronka Ruins, a floating fortress created by an ancient civilization. Over the course of the game, the crystals are shattered, but the heroes find their shards and gain the power of light from them, being named Warriors of Light. This game associates each party member with one of the elements, Bots with Wind, Lena with Water, Ferris with Fire, and Galuf with Earth. When all 4 crystals are shattered, the Warlock Exdeath is released, and he travels to another world where Galuf originally came from. Galuf explains he and his comrades, the Warriors of Dawn, faced Exdeath 30 years ago and sealed him using the crystals. But now the amplification of their power by humanity strained them and caused the seal to weaken, allowing Exdeath to control others to shatter the crystals and free himself. In Galuf's world, 4 more crystals are found in the Great Forest of Moor and are stolen by Exdeath. Exdeath destroys these crystals, and Bots' world and Galuf's world merge. It is revealed the 2 worlds were originally one world. 1,000 years ago, the necromancer Anuo sought the destructive power of the Void. The peoples of the world split the crystals in order to split the world, and Anuo and the Void were sealed in the interdimensional rift between worlds. With the crystals destroyed, the worlds have merged back together, and Exdeath is able to enter the rift and claim the Void for himself. The Warriors of Light pursue him and destroy him, and with the power of light contained within them and the spirits of the Warriors of Dawn and King Tycoon, the crystals are recreated and the world is restored, seemingly kept as one merged world again. Final Fantasy VI does not contain traditional crystals, but alludes to them with magicite. Magicite is the remains of an Esper after it dies, and allows the Esper's magical power to be transferred to humans. The party obtains magicite as a means to learn magic and combat the Gestalian Empire's magitech, and when Emperor Gestal and Kefka also learn about magicite, they shift their goals to acquiring it due to its greater potency and ease of use compared to magitech. At the end of the game, the power of magic vanishes from the world, and magicite loses its power and crumbles. Crystals are once again only alluded to in Final Fantasy VII. The Lifestream is a source of spiritual energy that circles the planet and is the source of all life. The Lifestream can be crystallized into materia, orbs that allow humans to tap into the power of the Lifestream to use magic and enhance their abilities. 2 particularly important materia are the Black Materia and the White Materia, which contain the ultimate magics Meteor and Holy. Sephiroth uses the Black Materia to summon Meteor to strike the planet, and Aerith prays for Holy to protect the planet from Meteor. The crystals are also referenced by the Huge Materia, 4 large materia shards created in Shinra's Mako reactors. The huge materia are colored the typical colors of the crystals, and 3 of them grant the party Master Materia for command, magic, and summons, and the 4th gives them the Bahamut Zero Materia. There are also 4 Materia Caves that contain 4 exceptionally powerful Materia Shards: Quadra Magic, Mime, HP-MP Swap, and Knights of the Round. More materia representing the crystals appear in Crisis Core. During the boss battle with Sephiroth, he can summon 4 materia to aid him. 3 of them cast Fire, Thunder, and Blizzard magic, and the 4th heals Sephiroth. Enemies with the same appearance as these materia shards can also be found in the Benora Underground. The crystal acts as a malevolent force in Final Fantasy VIII, which marks the first time the crystal appeared as a singular entity and not a group of 4. The crystal pillar is believed to have come from the moon, and creates an energy field that causes a phenomenon called the Lunar Cry, where monsters on the moon fall to Earth. The nation of Esthar under Sorcerer Sidel excavated the crystal pillar and enclosed it in a mobile fortress, the Lunatic Pandora, to study it and possibly learn how to trigger a lunar cry to use the crystal pillar as a weapon. During the events of the game, Ultimecia has Cypher take control of the Lunatic Pandora and activate the crystal pillar to cause a lunar cry. In Final Fantasy IX, the crystal's existence and significance is not revealed until very late in the game, as part of the game's many allusions to earlier titles. All worlds contain a crystal at their core that creates life, and when beings die, their souls and memories return to the crystal, strengthening it and allowing it to create more powerful life forms. Through this cycle, the life forms on a planet evolve and the crystal grows stronger. Thousands of years ago, the people of the world of Terra had achieved immortality, but without their souls to return to the crystal and flow with the natural cycle of life, it began to lose power and their world began to collapse. They sought to assimilate other planets to sustain themselves, and eventually tried to assimilate the planet Gaia, but the process failed and nearly destroyed both crystals. Terra ended up inside of Gaia, and the Terrans decided to use a more subtle process to take over the planet. They used the Aether Tree to disrupt the cycle of souls, and it rejected the Gaian souls as they returned to the crystal and replaced them with Terran souls. Over time, Gaia's crystal would change from blue to Terra's red, symbolizing Gaia becoming Terra. In the finale of the game, the party pursues Kuja into Memoria, a realm created by the memories of the souls of Gaia's life forms, and eventually arrive in the Crystal World, where a crystal rests. Kuja intends to destroy the crystal to destroy all life, but the party defeats him and returns to Gaia. By the game's end, it is ambiguous what will happen to Terra and Gaia and their crystals. Terra's crystal may be the large red orb shown in Garland's castle Pandemonium, but this is not confirmed. The crystal shown in the Crystal World is implied to be the original crystal from which all life began, and is not specifically Gaia's crystal, but this too is ambiguous. The game alludes to the crystals in several other ways. Alexander had its summoning jewel split into 4 pieces to prevent it from being summoned out of fear of its power. Though not apparent in-game, concept art shows the pieces of the jewel match the traditional colors of the crystals. Alexandria's shard is red, Clayra's is yellow, Lindblum's is green, and Madain Sari's is blue. The Kondipati mountain path has a minor side quest where the party can acquire 4 colored orbs and take them to an altar to receive a moonstone. In Ipsen's castle, the party finds 4 mirrors on a map of Gaia that correspond to 4 elemental shrines. This is a reference to the original Final Fantasy. Each shrine is guarded by a creature based on one of the 4 fiends that guarded the altars of the forces. By bringing the mirrors to the shrines, their power intersects at the Shimmering Island, and opens a portal to a parallel world ruled by a man named Garland that hails from thousands of years in the past. Thus, the mirrors can be considered another stand-in for the crystals. Final Fantasy X alludes to the crystals in a similar manner as VII. Fireflies, the essence of the dead, can be concentrated to create spheres, which can channel magical energy, record video and audio, and confer power on the user. When the Magus sisters use Delta attack, 8 crystals appear around them, a reference to their original appearance in Final Fantasy IV. In Final Fantasy XI, the world of Vana'diel is sustained by the 5 Mother Crystals, which were fragmented from the Great Crystal by the goddess Altana. 10,000 years ago, the Zealot harnessed the power of the Mother Crystals to build their civilization, and sought to open a gate to the realm of the gods to create paradise on Vana'diel. They built a system called the Crystal Line that channeled the light of the Mother Crystals into the gate, but were thwarted when the Kulu, an offshoot of the Zealot that are the ancestors of Tonberries, destroyed one of the arcs harnessing the Mother Crystals, creating a meltdown that devastated the world and seemingly wiped out the Zealot. In the expansion Rise of the Zealot, it is learned that the Archduke of the Duchy of Drano, Camlano, and his brother Ealnash are actually survivors of the Zealot, who were frozen in stasis and awoken a few decades prior. The brothers seek to reactivate the crystal line and become gods, and manifest 5 warriors from the Mother Crystals, the Crystal Warriors, to aid them. The adventurer and their allies eventually defeat the Crystal Warriors and stop Ealnash before he can reactivate the crystal line. Ealnash attempts to reactivate the crystal line prematurely to purposefully cause another catastrophic meltdown, but is stopped by Lion, daughter of the pirate king Gilgamesh. In the next expansion, Chains of Promathia, despite the Zealot being stopped, they drained some of the light from the Mother Crystals and made them vulnerable to a dark force called the Emptiness, which is the will of the Twilight God Promathia. The adventurer learns that the 5th Mother Crystal, which was believed lost, still exists in the city of Altiu, but has lost its light entirely and is a focal point of Promathea's resurrection. The city of Altiu now exists in a dimension contained within the Mother Crystal while still holding the Mother Crystal in itself. This realm is aptly named the Imperial Paradox. Eventually, the adventurer and their allies enter the Imperial Paradox and defeat Promathia, and the light of the Mother Crystals is restored. The Mother Crystal in the Imperial Paradox features again in Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, intended as the game's final expansion. Celtius is in the process of creating a new Mother Crystal to replace the weakened one in the Imperial Paradox. The process will take much time, but Iroha, a girl from the future, confirms he succeeds. A different type of crystal, the Seed Crystal, is the main antagonist of the add-on, A Crystalline Prophecy. The Seed Crystal comes to Vana'diel singing a song of destruction, intending to destroy and remake the world, but it is defeated and its song is cancelled out by a song of creation, the main theme of the Final Fantasy series. Crystals appear throughout Final Fantasy XII as stones and magicite infused with magical energy called Mist. The Arcadian Empire has risen to power thanks to nethicite, artificial crystals that are exceptionally powerful. A major plot point is the 3 shards of Deifacted nethicite that belong to King Wraithwall. The shards were cut from the Suncrest, a massive shard of nethicite hidden far on the outskirts of Ivalice. With the shards, Wraithwall united Ivalice under his reign. During the game, Ash has the opportunity to cut her own shards from the Suncrest, but refuses their power. Dr. Sid and Renar reintegrate Wraithwall's shards into the Suncrest, causing it to spill a copious mist across Ivalice. To stop it, the Suncrest is destroyed by Redis. Additionally, the portal to the realm of the Acuria rests within the Great Crystal, a massive shard of crystal the party can enter and traverse. Final Fantasy XIII references the crystals with fal'Cie, godlike beings created by the deities Linzay and Pulse. At their core, all fal'Cie are sapient crystals, and their bodies are shells constructed around the crystal to give them a proper form. This is also implied to be true of the highest god of the setting, Bunavelza. In the ending of Lightning Returns, once Bunavelza is destroyed, the heroes find a crystal in the void of space, which creates a new world for them to inhabit. In the setting of Final Fantasy XIV, the world's aether is believed to come from the Mother Crystal that resides at the core of the planet, and the idea of the Mother Crystal is synonymous with Hydaelyn, the goddess of the planet. During the base game questline, the Warrior of Light is tasked with retrieving 6 crystals of light. They are earned by defeating monsters aspected with different elements, including primals. At the end of the base game questline, the Warrior of Light uses the crystals to form a Blade of Light to expel the Ascian Laha Brea from Thancred's body. Shortly after this, they receive a vision of a Dark Crystal, which represents Zodiac, the god of darkness that is worshipped by the Ascians. In the expansion Endwalker, the Warrior of Light and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn meet Hydaelyn face to face. They learn the Mother Crystal is a separate object formed from vast amounts of aether she had gathered over aeons, in preparation for the day humanity would need to travel the stars to seek out and destroy the true enemy that threatens the planet. The remains of the Mother Crystal are later consumed by Xenos, so he can transform into the primal Shinru and fly to aid the Warrior of Light. The Crystals of Light are referenced during the battle with Hydaelyn, when she summons them to aid her. Final Fantasy XV's crystal is a gift from the Astrals, the gods of Eos, and is the means by which they commune with humans. The kings of Lucis and their guardians, the Glaives, have guarded the crystals for centuries and can tap into its power. The crystal is said to be the means by which the kings of Lucis are crowned, and it will someday crown the true king to save the world from darkness. The kings of Lucis wear the ancestral ring of the Lucii, which bears a small shard of the crystal as a symbol of their connection to the crystal and their divine right to rule. The Empire of Niflheim invades Lucis's capital Insomnia and steals the crystal, and takes it to Zignatus Keep in their capital. The reason they steal the crystal is not fully clear, but is due to the machinations of Arden, who wishes to destroy the line of Lucian kings, and it is implied he told Emperor Eldercap that the crystal could make him immortal. Near the end of the game, Noctis finds the crystal and is drawn into it. The leader of the Astrals, Bahamut, tells him this was done so he may absorb the light of the crystal into the ring of the Lucii, and wield it against Arden to finally banish the darkness, fulfilling the prophecy of the true king. Crystals and their associated imagery have appeared in many spin-off titles. Sometimes they are critical to the plot, other times they are invoked merely for the symbolism of the crystals and their importance to the Final Fantasy series. In Final Fantasy Tactics, crystals appear in the form of Auracite. The Church of Glabados passes down legends that the Auracite was wielded by a group named the Zodiac Braves to defeat a group of demons called the Lucavi. In truth, the Lucavi dwell within the Auracite and can possess their holders to manifest through them, and their goal is to release their leader, Ultima, believing she can free them all from the Auracite. In Tactics Advance, the game takes place in a dream world version of Evil East. Marsh learns the crystals are what bind the world together, and believes destroying them is the only way to escape the dream. Final Fantasy Type 0 provides its own take on the lore of Final Fantasy XIII, and so its crystals are similar to fal'Cie, though are not exactly the same. Each of the 4 nations of Orience holds a crystal that grants them a particular boon, and is associated with the nation's representative animal. The Vermilion Bird Crystal of Rubrum grants the nation magic, the White Tiger Crystal of Militesi gives them weapons, the Azure Dragon Crystal of Concordia allows them to commune with dragons, and the Black Tortoise Crystal of Lorcia gives its people robust strength and health. Each crystal can also bestow power on a member of its nation to fight to defend it, naming them l'Cie. The Militesi Empire declares war on the other nations with the intent of seizing their crystals, as Marshal Cid seeks to free humanity from their influence. Cid has developed technology that can cut off the power of the crystals, the Crystal Jammer, and uses one to invade Rubrum. However, Class 0 repels the attack, as they take their power not from a crystal, but from another source. The lore reveals the crystals are actually the creations of fal'Cie, who use them to control Orience's nations. At the end of the game, the fal'Cie depart Orience, and the crystals lose their power. Crystals are central to the setting of the Crystal Chronicles series. Long ago there was a great crystal which was shattered by a meteor. The meteor created a miasma that spawned monsters and was fatal to humans, but the people learned that the shards of the Great Crystal can repel the miasma. The games of the series explore the idea of the crystal being a holder for the memories of all living beings, and is omnipresent across multiple points in time and space, and people can tap into its powers to change time and warp reality. Gathering the crystals is the focus of Dissidia Final Fantasy's main story. Cosmos tells her warriors to gather them, as they have the power to end the War of the Gods. The crystals are not physical objects initially, but are fragments of Cosmos' power she has granted her chosen, and by showing a strong will, it manifests as a crystal. Each crystal is somehow reflective of the bearer's original game, such as clouds resembling the white materia, or Zidans being based on the crystal of the Crystal World. However, creating them taxes Cosmos' power to the point Chaos is able to destroy her, but the light of the crystals allows her warriors to remain and make a final strike against Chaos. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest follows a plot outline similar to the original Final Fantasy, with 4 crystals that are having their power suppressed by a member of the Vile Four, causing the regions of the world to be plagued by disasters. When the Vile Four are slain and the crystal is restored, the world seems at peace, but Benjamin climbs the focus tower in the center of the world to confront the Dark King behind the Four. When the Dark King is defeated, the 5th crystal, the Crystal of Light, regains its power, and reveals it has been aiding Benjamin in his quest in the guise of an old man. In Bravely Default, the 4 crystals of the world act as a balancing force for the world of Luxembourg. The crystals are cared for by a Vestal, and if they are neglected, or if their power is abused, their powers will wane in the region. The Crystal Fairy Aerie tricks the party into awakening the power of the crystals to summon a holy pillar that acts as a portal to another version of Luxembourg. Aerie has done this across countless versions of Luxembourg in order to eventually create a portal to the Celestial Realm, the home of the gods, so her master Ouroboros, the god of destruction, can invade and conquer it. In Bravely II, Ares' older sister Anne manipulates Kaiser Oblivion into awakening the crystals again as part of a plan to use the Holy Pillar to destroy Luxembourg. In Bravely Default 2, the fairy Edna attempts to drain the crystals of power to release the Knight's Nexus, the game's main antagonist that wishes to destroy Luxembourg and was sealed by the crystals. The 4 elemental crystals appear in Super Mario RPG as part of the boss fight with Culex, who is a reference to the Final Fantasy series. Both games were developed by Square. The crystals use attacks in their various elements, with the water crystal also having ice and the wind crystal having lightning. Thank you to everyone for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more lore Final Fantasy in the future, and stop by the community tab on my channel to vote on the next subject.